Let's start. Anticipation has been recognized as a tool of simultaneous interpreting since 1952, but it wasn't until 1978 in a symposium of the OTAN that it began to be studied in a systematic way. Some authors have different perspectives about it. Anticipation can be defined as the capacity of the interpreter to produce one or more words before or at the same time with the speaker words. They can achieve that through linguistic or contextual aspects. We can divide anticipation into word prediction and sense expectation. Word prediction only requires linguistic knowledge. For example, in the sentence, people are playing important positive ... we can anticipate the word roles. So the full sentence is people are playing important positive roles. Regarding sense expectation anticipation, this one does need contextual information. For instance, with the phrase they held off, if the speech is related to war, we can complete the idea with their enemies attacked. So the full idea is they held off their enemies attacked. However, if the context is more diplomatic, we can anticipate the phrase their decision. So the full sentence is they're held off their decision. Regarding sense expectation, we can also find anticipation of everyday life. We can find this in greetings and at the start and end of any speech. Lederer also made a difference between anticipation and freewheeling. Anticipation happens when the interpretation is before the interpreter's words, and freewheeling is when the interpreter and the speaker go at the same time. Regarding the objectives of anticipation, we know that anticipation helps the interpreter to improve the quality. Anticipation also helps interpreters to improve the harmony between languages. For instance, German has a syntactic structure of subject, object, verb. However, in other languages like French and Spanish is subject, verb, object. Anticipation has been studied in different fields, such as sports and car driving. In those cases, anticipation is a response to a stimulus. For instance, a volleyball player can anticipate the position of his opponent. This means that anticipation is the deliberate act of paying attention. So, this is all caused by the autonomic nervous system. Regarding simultaneous interpreting, anticipation is a cognitive process. Now we're going to talk about the cognitive definition of anticipation. Traditionally, in the interpreting field, anticipation has been defined as an observable act. But this doesn't we must have a cognitive perspective of anticipation. Anticipation is a continuous process that we do at the same time we are listening the speaker's words. According to Limi, anticipation is about formulate expectations of the message. We contrast these expectations so that we can produce a message. If the expectations align with what is happening in the real context, then the interpreter can produce an idea immediately. There's another definition by Devot that says that anticipation is a mechanism of activation of previous knowledge. Anticipation is not only a reaction to external stimulus, but a deliberate cognitive activity that combines perception, inferences, and memory. We can look at this through psychophysiology. Anticipation is a mental and physical preparation that happens in the interpreter just before the speaker finishes his words. Here's an example. Let's imagine a situation. We have the stimulus, represented by an S. Stimulus is the message of the speaker. When the interpreter is listening to the message, his brain activates a part related to the mental and physical preparation of what is coming next. Then, the interpreter generates a response represented by the letter R. And if this response is correct, it's going to align with the message of the speaker. Therefore, we can understand anticipation as the building of mental representation that at first is incomplete, but through this, the interpreter can produce a message. We can talk about anticipation through several theories. We're going to focus on the relevance theory. According to Van de Witt, we can look at anticipation through the relevance theory. But why this theory is useful to do so? The relevance theory says that every communicative act is not only about linguistics, but it also has a pragmatic part known as pragmatic insights. Secondly, this theory is appropriate because it gives us conceptual tools that are very useful to understand the cognitive surroundings, contextual effect, and inferences that the interpreter produces. Lastly, through this theory, we can understand interpretation as an ostensive inferential communication process in which the speaker produces certain stimulus that make the interpreter to generate some assumptions. The interpreter searches for the most relevant assumptions that align with the message of the speaker.